The British person that I was with was like, we can't just move. We have to ask. And I'm like, you don't have to ask. You just do it and then it happens. Honestly, I was considered a quiet person in the US. I spent my entire life in the US with people asking me to speak up and to talk louder because they couldn't hear me. I moved to the UK and within a couple days, people are telling me to be quiet.
Today, we're going to be reacting to a video by Gone Girl London entitled 7 American Habits That Are Rude in the UK.
Well, I've got a few ideas. Let's see what she has to say and whether we agree or disagree.
I have accumulated many of these examples personally, as well as stories I've heard from fellow American expats who live in the UK and are usually trying to do their best, but are sometimes accidentally being rude or just weird. Now, the first thing on my list of an American thing to do that would be considered rude or not acceptable or just strange in the UK is giving a guest a house tour. So in the States, it's not considered weird. Americans love giving a house tour. A visitor comes over to your house and you want to show them around your house. And I know that the British people in the audience are initially going to think, well, it's because Americans want to show off their house. And we don't do that here. We don't brag about things like Americans do. And in some ways, that could be true. You could be proud of your house or things that you've done to it, and maybe you do want to show it to somebody for some appreciation. However, there is also another element to this to consider. Now, what I've come across in the UK is that your house is considered a very personal space for the people who live there. And of course you can have visitors over, and people do have visitors over at times, but it seems to be that British people love meeting out and about. So typically a British home is going to be smaller than an American home in many instances. So practically it doesn't always make sense to have people in your space. But equally in the UK, we have pub culture and restaurants that allow you to sit and enjoy your meal for more than like 20 minutes. So in the UK, meeting friends and meeting people out is much more done than in the US. In the US, we do enjoy our home as a place to have people over for longer periods of time. And so this reflects back on why Americans love giving a house tour, because in some ways we are trying to make our guests feel at home. And I'm not in any way saying that we're showing them our underwear drawer, but you might show them around and take them around your house in kind of a welcoming kind of way. This isn't done in the UK.
I myself had shown people around when they've come to my house in America for the first time, you know, because they're interested. They're interested. Goodness me, I'm interested. If I go to somebody's house, I want the full tour.
I love the house tour, I must admit. I think it's maybe a little bit of nosiness, but I love houses. I love seeing what people have done in their homes. I think you can learn a lot about people from what they do with their personal space. I don't know, I think it's really a nice way to be welcomed in the sense that it gives you something to talk about other than, oh, the weather's a bit grotty, isn't it? Or, oh, what have you done this week? You know, the usual small talk. It gives you something else to discuss. I think maybe that is an element of showing off, but I don't think it's conceited. I think it's more just pride and something to talk about and a way to welcome people in. Yeah. I think it's more those things than it is about, I want to show this person my new bathroom, you know.
They're going to be so jealous.
Yeah. I don't think it's meant to make the other person feel bad. No. I think it's meant to be a welcoming gesture.
Yeah. As a culture, Americans share more of themselves. Yeah. We're more private and reserved. So that's an extension of themselves, and it just feels natural to them to sort of welcome you to share it with them.
I think she's right as well. I think in the UK this wouldn't take very long usually because very often there's just kind of like 2 up, 2 down or something.
It wasn't like the ones that she showed on the video, which looked amazing and spatial and palatial. So not all homes are stately like that in the UK. And she does point out that her place where she's living in the UK now would be a very quick tour. Say you've got a semi-detached house. You don't say to people, do you want to go upstairs and just look around all the bedrooms?
I'd be quite freaked out if I went to a British person's house and they're like, do you want to see my bedroom?
Now, the next thing on my list actually has to do with American servers within a restaurant and the behavior that would be considered rude, which is not only constantly checking in on you and kind of, in some ways, probably to a British person, bothering you during your meal, but in the US, servers just as a general rule, this isn't just one person or considered rude or anything, they will give you your check or your bill for the meal basically as soon as they've delivered the food. If not that, like a couple minutes after. That would be considered extremely weird and extremely rude in the UK, as if your server is trying to get rid of you. But the thing is, in America, they kind of are, because they rely on tips, which is an entirely different video, and so much of their wage comes from being able to turn over tables quickly, and this would never fly in the UK. The restaurant experience is totally different, and so if a British family does go to the US, that's something to remember, that the American waiter or waitress is not, within the context of American culture, being rude by giving you your bill for the meal really soon after they serve you your food.
I think it's particularly prevalent in breakfast places where there's a shorter space of time and they do need to turn the tables over quickly so that they would put your bill there. I think in general they'll hold the bill back, or the check should I say, because they want to upsell the dessert or other add-ons or another drink or another cocktail, another bottle of wine, so that they get a bigger tip at the end, because you'll have paid more for the meal, so they get that. If they're getting 20% of a much bigger bill is much better for them. So I don't find that, do you?
No, it does happen, as you say, in breakfast restaurants or lunch restaurants particularly, and it is something that I do not like when I'm eating. I understand, as she says, the reasoning for it from the server's perspective, but in terms of the customer experience, I don't think it's great, because even though they always put it down and nicely say no rush at all, you still feel rushed. In those contexts, it definitely happens, and it's a shame that the culture allows that to happen. However, I think if you were going to more of an evening meal, you would have the experience that you're describing, in that they would try and actually encourage you to buy more and stay for longer in the hope of working up a bigger tip.
Yeah. I hate it when they say in a restaurant that you have to leave by a certain time, and that actually happened to us when we were in the UK last year. There were a couple of restaurants, one we did go to because people had raved about it, the other one we didn't because of this time restriction. So yeah, that feeling of being rushed for whatever reason is not pleasant.
No, and I wonder what they would do. This happened to me in the UK as well. When I was reserving a table, I noticed it said if you're a table of 2, you have this long. If you're a table of 4, you have this long. It's like, what are they going to do if you're continuing to buy things?
Yeah, I don't know. Do they just stand over you and tut?
Would they actually say, no, you can't order more, you have to...
Yeah,
I don't know what they would do.
Yeah, do they just say, pay up, you can't have dessert?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
But to me, it just struck me as the most pretentious thing, because I did book this table because me and my friend were curious about it, and there was literally no one in there. And I was like, this is so funny. And I think we were there longer than the designated time.
But that puts people off booking it in the first place. It must do it really. I mean, for this other restaurant, we just didn't book it because we thought, no.
And I don't know whether this is something that I've ever been aware of in America, when you're actually reserving a table. I can't think of a time where I've ever been told ahead of time that I have a specific time limit that I can think of. Have you ever come across this, Americans or people who have visited America? Is this something that happens out here, or is this something that's now creeping into the UK instead?
The servers in America, because of the tip situation, are a little bit more regular with their calls to the table, which can be a bit irritating if you're in the middle of a conversation. But they are so friendly and so helpful. You kind of forgive that, I think.
After American habit that is considered rude in the UK has to do with eating as well, and that is to do with what you do with your knife and fork after you finish a meal. So in the UK, the polite thing and general thing you're supposed to do, and people just seem to do as a matter of like not even thinking about it, is you put your utensils together on your plate and it looks something like this. And this is not really done in the US. So there is no official signal for I have finished my food or I am done with my meal. And you kind of just leave your utensils wherever you want to leave them. They could be on the plate, they could be off the plate, they could be making a cross, they could be like just stacked in any weird old way. You basically just throw your utensils down and that means you're done. That is considered rude in the UK in the sense that it's just the polite thing to do to finish your meal by putting your utensils together on the plate, which is something that I have gotten better at remembering to do, but I still have to sometimes remember to do it naturally, and I see other people around me in the UK just doing this naturally, and I have to remember to gather all of my utensils and put them in this line on the plate to show that I'm done.
I think it stems from the Victorian code of etiquette, and table manners are hugely important, and we're all brought up to hold our knives and forks properly. Then when we're finished, we put them together on the plate at a slight angle, sort of kind of, would it be 4 o'clock?
Yeah, thereabouts. It doesn't have to be absolutely
No, it doesn't. No, you'd have to get a tape measure, but it's just together at an angle neatly. And I was horrified when I came to the States.
One thing I just could not, to be honest, I just could not stand it when Americans leave their utensils on the table when they're done. Yeah. Like, okay, somewhere else on the plate, I can deal with that. But just on the table, for some reason, that just does something weird to me internally.
Yeah. I don't even like to see them splayed on the plate incorrectly, but on the table is an absolute no-no. And I've done it before. I've straightened up my husband's when I've been in the UK, you know, but didn't like to sort of point it out directly, but just quickly.
Otherwise, how are they to know you're done?
Yeah, it's to know you're done, but it's also a mark of kind of respect, of good table manners, the polite thing to do. Another thing that I find odd with cutlery, or silverware as they call it over here, is that when you've had, say, your starter, your appetizer, then the main course comes along, you're not automatically given a clean set of cutlery. You have to actually put them down on a side plate or on the table, and then wait for your main course or entree to come along. And so long, the entree would be delivered to me, and I go, excuse me, I've got no cutlery. Well, I didn't understand the word cutlery. And then my husband said, oh, can she have some silverware, please? Because it had been taken away, because I'd politely left it at an angle on my appetizer plate. But in the UK, you don't reuse your cutlery.
No, and I hate when you have to start your main meal with the same dirty knife and fork that you had for your... So in the UK, you either have like a series of
set in a particular
cutlery
order, which you have to work out, start from the outside, go in, basically.
Yeah, if you've seen the Titanic, you'll know what we mean. Yeah. Or they will bring you a fresh set, just as part of service.
Yeah, it's just what's done, isn't it?
Yeah. In the US, sometimes I put my knife and fork on the starter plate, and they'll come and start to take it when they go, oh, do you want to keep your knife and fork? And I'm like, no,
I want clean.
Horrified at the idea.
I know, it is so weird. I mean, they're so polite and they're so friendly and they're so professional with their customer service. Why the heck do you, I mean, surely it doesn't save that much on the washing up, does it?
I wonder if it is something to do with that, or maybe Americans just aren't bothered by this at all.
What do you think, Brits? I mean, are you horrified at that too? Or should we get a life?
The next thing on my list is Americans being loud. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're not loud. We are loud. Honestly, I was considered a quiet person in the US. I spent my entire life in the US with people asking me to speak up and to talk louder because they couldn't hear me. I moved to the UK, and within a couple days, people are telling me to be quiet. Americans just speak loudly. We just are loud, and it's a trait that is considered relatively rude in the UK because it's infringing on other people's right to enjoy the environment surrounding them. And this is particularly prevalent with Americans on like public transportation in the UK. So if you take the tube in London or a train, you can usually hear the Americans before you can see them. It's just, we're not trying to be rude. We just culturally are loud. I think
this is in part because the UK has such a dense population. So we're very used to being quite close to each other in, you know, public transport situations, restaurant situations. You're taught and you just learn to keep things at a contained volume. Whereas in America, there is so much more space, generally speaking. Of course, you have densely populated cities, but generally speaking, people have more personal space. Perhaps there's a need to speak louder to transmit your message. But also, I think it's just more culturally acceptable because people aren't so packed in.
And also, historically, you know, it's not good manners to make yourself loud. It's irritating to other people. And I also think that We are more reserved. We don't necessarily want other people to hear what we're talking about. We would rather be more intimate. Whereas Americans are happy for everybody to know what they're talking about in their business.
True.
And we find that a little bit strange, I think.
That is true, yeah. Americans will have what I would consider quite personal conversations at great volume in public spaces, just generally speaking.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I noticed this really clearly when I went back to the UK recently. It was my first trip back in about 5 years, so I hadn't been home for a long time. And not everyone, of course, but some people, it did appear to me that they were almost mumbling, talking into themselves, and their mouths weren't moving much. And I had to ask a few people to speak up. I think I am a little bit hard of hearing, just generally speaking.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Me too.
Over here, I can't think of many Americans who I have to ask to speak up regularly.
No, there's not too many, unless they've got a strong accent. But even then, not really.
Yeah, then the volume isn't really the problem.
Yeah. No, it's not a problem with volume, that's for sure.
The next American habit that's considered rude in the UK, and this is definitely a little bit of a cringy one, is not saying please or thank you or please can you do this, not having those like niceties attached to what you're saying. And this is definitely one of those things I notice when I'm in the US. An example would be if you are in a store and asking where something is. In the UK, you would go up to a person and you would say, "Oh, sorry, can you please tell me where the flower is?" Or you would just have all these different words to say, "Excuse me," "Please can you help me?" or something like that. In the US, a lot of people, and this does depend on region a little bit, but a lot of people would just go up to the person in the store and they wouldn't have any of these other words. They would just say, "Where's the flower?" And they might say it in a way that to us in the States is still a nice way of saying it. I'm not saying that they're going to be demanding. We could still say it nicely, but we wouldn't include the other words like "excuse me," "please can you help me," "can you do this?" We would just kind of go in directly with our question.
Yeah, it is bad manners to our ears. I would never ask for something in the store without saying, "Excuse me, and would you mind showing me where?" Or, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but could you just point out where I can get the flower, please?" And then profusely thank at the end. I could never say, "Where's the flower?"
Oh no, oh God, I just could not bring myself to do it.
No.
And now that I've lived in America for a while, this bothers me less, but certainly when I first got here, it was incredibly jarring how Americans would ask for things. It took me back and I was like, oh.
How rude.
Yeah, exactly, because you're just not used to it.
I feel, I'm in a school mommy type way, I feel like saying, "Please."
Yeah.
"Thank you." Often, sometimes when people don't thank me, I go, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
Whoops. But it is rude. I know they're so direct, but surely a little please and thank you goes a long way.
I think it goes a long way, but I think in America this is just not
They don't think it's necessary. It's all added. Everything is direct, isn't it? The way they explain things, the way they do things. They don't faff about like we do. They just go directly there. So it's very much in their culture, whatever they're doing, it's a straight line from A to B.
Yes, absolutely. And Americans just don't seem to like apologize for their presence in the same way that we do. Like she says, we'll go up to people and we'll immediately start with, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Could you just help?" Like before we've even done anything, we're apologizing just for being there and for needing assistance from someone who's probably employed to help us.
Yes, exactly. But you couldn't just, I'd feel like I was being so entitled.
I think that's it. I think it's just trying to avoid big-headedness, which is just frowned upon so much in the UK. You're supposed to be more humble.
Yeah, and feeling you're on the same level as that person, not that you are elevated up there, they're down there, like you're talking to a servant.
I think that's it as well. It's a mark of respect to someone who's in a customer service position.
Yes.
And putting yourself on the same level as them.
Yes.
Which I think is quite a nice thing to try and do.
Yeah, I do too. And when you've been on the other side as the customer service type person, being spoken to in that manner is not nice.
No.
And it immediately makes your hackles rise and makes you feel like, "No, I'm bloody well going to show you where the flower is. Go and find it yourself."
And the next thing on my list that Americans do that can be considered weird in the UK is talking very openly about religion and asking people questions about their religion. And what I mean by this is In the UK, religion is seen as a personal thing. So you might go to church, you might not, you might go to another religious venue, you might not, but you're not going to expect people that you don't know to ask you about it. In the US, this is a little different. As a country, America is much more religious than the UK, and it is seen as more appropriate to ask a stranger maybe where they go to church, because the assumption is that a lot of people do, especially in certain parts of the US, or you might ask them what religion they are. And again, there's going to be differing experiences of this depending on where you live in America and your age and, you know, your social group and things like that. But as a general rule, it's more acceptable in the US to speak about and to ask strangers or acquaintances about religion. In the UK, this is definitely considered rude and not acceptable because religion is viewed as a much more intensely personal and private thing.
Yeah, before we started recording today, we asked my husband, who's American, if anyone had ever had this conversation with him or asked him about his religion or asked him where he went to church and things like that. And he said no one had ever asked him. This is something that he had never experienced. So he said that it's probably something more typical of older Americans,
right,
in his opinion.
Well, speaking as an older person, I haven't had anyone ask me about my religion. Maybe because they assume as I'm British, I don't necessarily have one.
Going to be a heathen.
Yeah. Unless we get onto the subject somehow, but I've never directly been asked that question. Have you?
No, not that specific question. When I first moved here, someone did invite me to come to their church with them, which did strike me as unusual. I wouldn't say rude. I took it to be more of a welcoming thing because I was new here, you know, a kind of kind gesture. But I did find it hard to navigate because, to be honest, I didn't want to go. And the reason for that is this kind of like this feeling that they might be trying to
indoctrinate. Against some cult or something.
Yes, like if you go once, there's then, oh, do you have to go again?
Yeah, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Yeah, going once, then they might expect you to keep going. So you can't just do the one time. What did you say?
I politely declined. I said I had plans for the next few Sundays.
For the next 3 years.
for the Sundays for the rest of my life.
Every single Sundays I do things.
Which
can't be changed.
No, exactly, no. It didn't hit me as something that was rude or an intrusion or something that shouldn't be discussed or anything like that. But I would say it's also something that I've never experienced in the UK.
And the final thing on my list has to do with queuing. Of course it does. The American habit that is considered rude in the UK is essentially pushing to the front of things or taking things before you wait your turn or you ask. In the UK, the art of queuing is well known. People are very good at it. People are good at lining up, waiting for things, waiting your turn. The British way is sort of just being like, no, you go first. No, you go first. Or just really having a sense of order when it comes to who gets what next. In America, it is kind of everyone for yourself. We are very bad at lining up. I don't know if you've seen the scene in an iconic American Christmas film called Jingle All the Way, with Arnold Schwarzenegger of all people. But there is a scene when they get a toy into the toy shop that all the parents want and they essentially trample each other to get to it. This has happened in the US. This is something that I watch and I'm like, yes, this makes sense for America. This is kind of how we operate. And we can even take it from the funny, silly, like physical example of, you know, not being able to line up or like rushing into a toy shop or something like that. But it also tends to extend to other areas as well. So as an example, there was one time when I was on a plane traveling with a British person and the plane had empty seats in the same like economy section that we booked. So it wasn't like first class empty seats, but there were empty seats and there were seats that I would have preferred to sit in more than the one that I had, but there weren't that many empty seats. So my American self was like, we're just gonna move. We're just gonna move. We're not gonna ask. We're just gonna go and move to these other seats that are empty. And this has always worked for me. This is just the American way. I see something that's open. I'm like, okay, nobody else is using this and it's in the same class that I've booked. So I'm just gonna go and sit there. I'm gonna take it. The British person that I was with was like, we can't just move. We have to ask. And I'm like, you don't have to ask. You just do it and then it happens. But the British way can be seen as much more polite and less rude to not just go and assume you can do things, but to ask, to again, wait your turn. Is it okay if I go and sit in that other seat? Where the American in me was just like, no one else is doing it, so I'm gonna go and do it.
Oh yes, and we've told many stories on this channel before about times that have really irked us where Americans have cut in or jumped the line or something like that, and it's just so frustrating because it's
back of the queue.
Back of the queue, mate. Yeah. And it's such a disregard for other people around you, this entitlement and self-importance. I'm not saying all Americans do it, but as a general rule, it's far more acceptable here than it is in the UK. So a story that I haven't told on the channel before, I was trying to think of a different queuing story. Me and my husband were going to see a band. It happened to be my favourite band. And we booked this VIP experience. It was my birthday. We were going to go meet the band, have our pictures taken. I was so excited. And a line had formed in a kind of snake-like pattern like this up to the door. And we got there early and we joined the line and waited. And then when the doors opened, everyone just went like this, not like a nice orderly fashion. There was just a huge sudden movement of people. And I felt like I was so upset and devastated and a little bit angry, to be honest.
Yeah.
I started to get kind of, this emotion rising up in me. And guys, I am not an angry person typically. I'm actually, despite getting angry about the knife and fork earlier, I'm actually very calm and laid back mostly. But there are just these things like this, which just...
It's the unfairness.
It's the injustice of it.
Yeah, the injustice. The fact that people think that they're more important than anybody else and that out of my way, I deserve this. And you'd been waiting for such a long time. I just think that's horrendous. That's just so bad-mannered, so selfish.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I think in general, Americans are more likely to be rule breakers than the British.
Yeah.
And this goes to what she was saying as well, I think, with the seat on the plane. In Britain, it's like, well, I booked this seat, this is my seat, and I will stay here unless I have asked permission to move. In America, it's more just like, well, this is my seat, but also I like that seat. So
I'm going to have that seat. I'd be really miffed. I was waiting to ask somebody, and then loads of other Americans got in there first, and I would be thinking, oh, why don't I just go for that?
I know, that's probably what would happen, wouldn't it? You'd miss your opportunity.
Yeah.
Whereas Americans, I suppose if you were going to put it in a positive light, if they see an opportunity to improve their situation, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
Another example, I was kind of thinking of times when this has been a bit unusual, I suppose, living in America. And another example is when you might have like a buffet, help yourself style dinner. Yeah. And maybe there's something like one potato left. In the UK, we'd be like, would you like that? Or do you mind if I have it? Or you might say, help yourself to the last potato. There's this kind of
You wouldn't
thing.
just take the last potato.
You would not just take the last potato. There'd be some discussion about it first. Yeah. In America, if it's there, someone's just going to have it.
Yeah, exactly. It's that different attitude, isn't it?
And I think maybe in the UK, it does come from a sense of fairness and rightness, but I think it also comes from a sense of taking care of each other.
Yes, I think so. Like, for example, driving. Over here, people don't tend to let you in. If you've got in the wrong lane by mistake and you need to turn, people will often speed up behind you. In the UK, you tend to be more gracious about it and you sort of flash your lights or indicate, they go, that's all right, you go. You stop and you let people through. You never stop here and let people through, even if they're on a crossing sometimes.
Yeah, and actually, as you say, people will make it harder for you to do things like that by speeding up.
They do, yes, and I get so angry about that.
It's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Why can't they just wait while you've made a mistake? You're doing the British thing, sorry, and then they just speed up.
Yeah.
And then you turn into a totally different person. Are you an American who thinks, oh my goodness, calm down, what are you getting all hot under the collar about? Or are you a Brit that's like nodding profusely and saying, it's awful, shocking? Where do you stand in all this?
Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give us a like and maybe hit subscribe to see more of our videos on YouTube.